Welcome to Nikki's Nightmares, where chilling tales come to life. Tonight, we descend into the haunting world of the Black-Eyed Kids, a compilation of the most disturbing and paranormal encounters ever witnessed. From eerie midnight knocks to children with eyes as black as the void, these true horror stories will make you question what's real and what's waiting just beyond the light. Each Black-Eyed Kid's encounter in this terrifying collection peels back another layer of darkness, stories whispered in fear by those unlucky enough to meet them. Keep your doors locked and your eyes averted, because once you see them, they never forget you. If you crave scary stories, paranormal experiences, and real horror encounters, you're in the right place. Make sure to like, subscribe, and join me as we journey deeper into the unnatural and the unknown. The Nightgown Girls, a Black-Eyed Children encounter. It was earlier this summer, around the 4th of July, when I found myself sitting with my parents on the back porch, trading ghost stories over a few drinks. It's something we do every so often, mostly for fun. My dad always tells the same story about the time he swears he saw something living in the woods behind our old house, a creature he calls the elf. I usually laugh it off, but that night I decided to tell a story I'd buried for 15 years. A story I'm still not sure I believe myself. I was about 10 years old back then, just a kid growing up in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town. Ours was the kind of street where every mailbox looked the same and every lawn smelled like fresh-cut grass. My friends all lived in other parts of town, so most evenings I rode my Little Mermaid bike up and down the street, inventing adventures in my head just to keep from being bored. That night, the air was heavy and warm. The sky painted in that orange hue that only happens when the sun is sliding away, but hasn't quite left yet. Dinner was still a while off, so I rode my bike up toward the T intersection that marked the end of my block. That's where I usually turned around, but this time I stopped. 2 girls were sitting on the hill in front of the old house across the intersection. They looked about my age, maybe a little younger. Both wore pale nightgowns that caught the last bits of light from the setting sun. I remember thinking how strange it was to see anyone outside like that, barefoot in night clothes, just sitting there on the rocks. Smooth, rounded stones covered the yard, the kind that looked like tiny dinosaur eggs. It couldn't have been comfortable to sit on. Still, they were smiling at me, watching me. And somehow, they looked like they had been waiting. When I got close enough, one of them waved me over. "Come play with us," she called, cheerful and bright. The other joined in, nodding eagerly, their voices high and soft like the way kids talk when they're trying to sound extra nice. I was excited. Finally, someone my age nearby. I didn't even think to question it. I pedaled closer, feeling that spark of childlike hope that I might have new friends. They asked my name. I told them. Then I said I'd just have to run home real quick to tell my mom where I'd be. That's when their smiles faded. They didn't say anything at first, just exchanged a quick look between them, like they didn't expect me to say that. Then one of them spoke, her tone lower, quieter. "You don't have to tell her," she said. "You can stay with us. We won't be long." I remember feeling confused. Something about the way she said it didn't sound playful anymore. It sounded insistent. I told them it would only take a second, that I'd be right back, but they didn't like that answer. They both started urging me to stay, telling me my mom wouldn't even notice I was gone. That's when the excitement faded, replaced by this uneasy feeling crawling up my spine. That is when I became aware of their black eyes, devoid of human emotion. They seemed to be something completely different and not of this world. I smiled awkwardly, said I'd be back soon, and pedaled home fast. When I burst through the front door, my mom was in the kitchen. I told her there were 2 girls up the street who'd asked me to play, and I wanted to know if it was okay. She looked puzzled. "What girls?" she asked. "The ones sitting on the rocks by the big white house," I said. "They're waiting for me." She frowned for a moment, but said I could go ahead, just to be back before dark. So I ran back outside, jumped on my bike, and pedaled harder than before, almost excited again. But when I reached the intersection, they were gone. The yard was empty. The house behind them was still and silent. I waited a few moments, scanning the shadows. The air felt different now, quieter, heavier. I thought maybe they'd gone inside, so I walked my bike up the driveway and knocked on the door. An elderly woman answered, her expression kind but cautious. "Excuse me," I said politely. "The girls who live here asked me to come play. Are they home?" Her brows furrowed. "What girls?" "The 2 girls who were sitting out front a few minutes ago," I said. "They were right there." Her eyes softened in confusion. "Sweetheart, there aren't any children here. There haven't been for a very long time. You're the only kid who lives on this street." And before I could say another word, she closed the door. I stood there frozen on her porch, staring at the empty yard. The wind had picked up, stirring the leaves. For a second I thought I saw movement behind the curtains upstairs, but when I looked again, there was nothing. I got on my bike and rode home without looking back. That night, I didn't tell my mom what the old woman had said. I went straight to my room, shut the door, and pulled the covers up to my chin. For some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling that if I looked out my window, I'd see those 2 girls standing under the streetlight, smiling up at me. But I never saw them again. 15 years later, I told that story to my parents on the porch. As I was speaking, I stopped midway and laughed nervously, saying maybe I'd just dreamed it all up as a kid. Maybe it was one of those strange, vivid dreams that felt real but wasn't. But my mom looked at me, dead serious, and said she remembered that night. She remembered me asking if I could play with 2 girls up the street. She even remembered thinking it was odd because, as she put it, there were never any other kids in our neighborhood. That's when the chill ran down my spine again, the same one I felt the moment those girls looked disappointed I was leaving. Later that week, I started searching online for stories about ghostly children. That's when I found something that made my stomach twist, the legend of the black-eyed children. People claim they appear as lost kids asking for help or inviting you to come with them. Their eyes are entirely black. Some say they're spirits, others say they're something worse, something pretending to be human. I don't remember their eyes being black. In fact, I can hardly remember their faces at all. It's like my mind refuses to focus on them. All I remember are the nightgowns, the bare feet on those smooth stones, and the way their voices changed when I told them I had to go. Were they ghosts? A hallucination? Something else entirely? I don't know. But sometimes, when I drive through that old neighborhood late at night, I slow down as I pass that intersection. The house is still there, though it's been repainted. The rocks are gone now, replaced with grass, and every time I find myself staring at that same patch of lawn, waiting. Half of me hopes I never see them again. The other half wonders if they're still waiting for me. Black-eyed child at Pizza Haven. I've always believed in the paranormal, at least to a point. Ghosts, demons, strange coincidences that can't quite be explained. All that stuff fascinates me. But black-eyed children, I thought they were just stories. Until last night. I work as the assistant manager at a small pizza haven just off the highway. It's an older building, flickering fluorescent lights, ancient ovens that hum like they're alive, and a parking lot that feels like a void once the lights cut out after closing. My general manager hates the late shift, so I usually take it. Last night, that decision came back to haunt me. It was just after 2 a.m. The rain hadn't stopped all night, one of those steady, cold drizzles that turns everything slick and lifeless. My delivery driver and I were in the back, finishing up dough prep and wiping down counters. The place was quiet except for the low whine of the walk-in fridge. That's when I felt it, that creeping, unexplainable sense of unease, like someone was watching us. At first, I ignored it. I told myself it was just nerves, leftover tension from earlier when a homeless man had tried to come in before close, shouting about needing sanctuary. I brushed it off, but the feeling wouldn't fade. It lingered, heavy and electric, crawling up the back of my neck. Finally, I decided to check around the building. Everything was locked up tight, but something in me wouldn't rest until I looked. The dining room was empty, chairs stacked on tables, the dim glow of the soda machine casting long shadows across the floor. I moved toward the front doors. Nothing. The street beyond was deserted, just the glint of wet pavement reflecting the faint red of the neon sign. Then I walked over to the drive-through window, and that's when I saw her. She was standing no more than 10 feet away, just beyond the reach of the awning. A little girl, maybe 9 or 10 years old, her dress soaked through, her hair clinging to her face. She wasn't moving, just standing there in the rain, her head tilted slightly downward. For a moment, I just stared, trying to make sense of it. What was a child doing out here at this hour? In the freezing rain? Then she lifted her head, and I saw her eyes, completely black, no whites, no pupils, just empty, endless darkness, the kind of darkness that feels alive. It wasn't just that they were black, it was that they pulled, like staring into a well with no bottom. My chest tightened, and instinctively I stumbled back from the window. Every sound in the room seemed to vanish. No hum from the fridge, no rain on the glass, just silence. I sprinted to the office to grab my phone from the safe, hands shaking so badly I dropped the key twice. It couldn't have been more than 20 seconds before I ran back to the window. But she was gone. No footprints, no movement, just the rain, tapping softly against the glass like nothing had happened. The driver thought I was losing it until he stepped outside to check the lot and said the air felt wrong, heavy, still. Even the crickets had gone silent. We finished closing in silence. Neither of us spoke about it, but both of us felt the same thing, the sense that whatever she wasn't far, watching, waiting. The stories always say black-eyed children knock on doors, asking to be let in. As long as you don't invite them, you're safe. But this one never asked. She just stood there and vanished. And now, every night when I close, I can't help but glance at that window, half expecting to see her face staring back at me. Because once you've looked into those eyes, you never really stop seeing them. the black-eyed strangers. It was late afternoon, one of those grey, quiet days when the sky feels heavy and the world moves just a little too slow. I had parked outside the small theatre in my town, scribbling out a check I planned to drop off at the internet provider's office across the street. Just a routine errand. Nothing strange. Nothing that should have left me trembling the way I did a few minutes later. The first knock came from the driver's side window. Sharp, sudden, startling. 2 kids stood just outside. Both boys, maybe 12 or 13. One a little taller, one shorter, both dressed like any other kids you'd see walking home from school. But something about them was off. I couldn't explain it at first. It was just this sudden, overwhelming sense of dread that hit me like ice water. My heart started racing before either of them even spoke. I cracked the window just an inch. "Can I help you?" I asked. The older boy stepped forward, his voice oddly calm. Too calm. "Sir, could you give us a ride to my mother's house? We forgot our money, and we need to go back before the movie starts." The younger one just stood there, head tilted down, silent. I looked past them at the theatre marquee. The movie they mentioned had already been playing for over an hour. Something didn't add up. I tried to smile, to shake off the chill crawling down my neck. "You'll miss most of it anyway," I said. "Where's your mother's house?" The older boy's expression didn't change. "Just let us in," he said softly. "We can't get in your car unless you invite us." That sentence, it didn't sound right. Not for a kid. Not for anyone. My pulse thundered in my ears. My gut screamed at me to leave, but curiosity, it held me there. Then I saw it. When the taller boy lifted his head and the light hit his face, I finally saw his eyes. They were solid black, no whites, no pupils, just endless darkness. Every instinct in me snapped. My breath caught in my throat. "Come on, mister," the boy said again, voice still level, almost rehearsed. "We won't hurt you. You have to let us in. We don't have a gun." That last sentence, delivered in that flat, unnatural tone, shattered any illusion that they were normal kids. My hands were shaking as I reached for the gear shift. "No," I managed to whisper. "I think you should go." As I shifted into reverse, both of them stepped closer, palms pressed flat against the glass. I could feel something, pressure, static, whatever it was, filling the air around me. It felt wrong, like the world itself was bending. The older one's face was inches from mine now. "Please," he murmured, "let us in." That was it. I floored the accelerator, tires squealing as I tore backward out of the parking lot. My heart hammered against my ribs, the sound louder than the engine itself. I didn't dare look back until I reached the main road. When I finally did, they were gone. No kids on the sidewalk, no one in the lot. Nothing but empty pavement under the dim theatre lights. I sat there for what felt like forever, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it, but I know what I saw. Those eyes, those black eyes, were not human. The night my neighbor met the black-eyed kids. I've always loved Halloween. The chill in the air, the smell of pumpkin candles, the laughter of kids echoing down the street. Every house on my block goes all out, fake cobwebs, fog machines, flickering orange lights. Except this year, my neighbor didn't. He's usually the kind who turns his yard into a mini haunted house. But last night, as I was coming home from work, I noticed his porch was dark. No skeletons, no lights, no candy bowl. Just silence. I caught him outside and joked, "Hey man, you better start decorating or that house up the street's going to steal your Halloween crown." He gave this uneasy half smile and said, "Yeah, not this year. I'm keeping it dark." I laughed it off at first, but something in his voice, that tremor, that hollow tone, told me it wasn't about being lazy. So I asked, "You going out of town or something?" He shook his head. "No, something happened last year. I'm done with Halloween." That caught my attention. My neighborhood's safe. Families, kids, the usual. So I asked what happened. He looked down at the ground for a moment, then told me. Last year, his brother's family came over so the kids could trick or treat around here. They stayed until about 10:30. After they left, the streets went quiet, just a few older kids still running around. By 11:30, the candy bowl was half empty. He was watching TV when the doorbell rang. He checked the clock. Just after midnight. Weird, he thought. Maybe some stragglers. He still had his porch lights on, so he figured whatever, grabbed the candy and went to the door. He opened it and froze. 2 boys stood there. No costumes. One maybe 13 or 14, the other older, maybe 17. The older one wore a checkered flannel shirt. They just stared at him. He said the moment he met their gaze, this wave of dread washed over him. Like something primal deep in his chest told him, "You've made a mistake." He thought maybe they were wearing contact lenses. Their eyes were huge, too huge, and there was no white, just solid black. Still, he forced a smile, waiting for them to say trick or treat. But instead, the younger one said softly, "We got lost. Can we come in and use your phone?" He started to close the door, muttering, "No, sorry." Then the older one spoke. His voice was deeper, calmer. "Can we just wait inside until our parents come for us?" Something about the way he said it, flat, emotionless. It was wrong, unnatural. My neighbor told me it was like his instincts were screaming louder than his own thoughts. He kept repeating, "No, sorry, good night," inching the door shut, locking it fast. He said his heart was pounding so hard he thought he might pass out. Through the peephole, he saw them still standing there, just staring at the door. Then, after a long, unbearable moment, they turned and walked away into the dark. He didn't sleep that night, sat in front of the TV with the volume low, every light off, every noise making him flinch. He stayed awake until dawn. The next morning, he told his brother what happened. No one believed him, of course. So when he told me this story yesterday, I half smiled, trying to hide my own goosebumps. It sounded so familiar. I said, "Man, that sounds just like the Black-Eyed Kids." He frowned. "The what?" I told him. "The urban legend. The kids with pitch-black eyes who show up at doors, asking to come in. Once you invite them, well, no one really knows what happens next." He went pale, swore he'd never heard of them before. An hour later, there was a knock at my door. I nearly jumped out of my skin until I saw it was him again, wide-eyed, shaking. He said he'd looked them up. The stories were identical. That's when it hit me. Whatever came to his door that night wasn't a prank. And now every time I pass his house, the one that used to glow with orange lights and laughter, it's silent, empty, curtains drawn. Halloween comes and goes. But his porch light never turns on again. And I can't help but wonder if those kids ever came back, and if next time they'll come knocking on my door instead. The story ends here, but the terror does not. Join me again, like, comment, and subscribe if you dare.